Let's discuss all of the day's news with the Conservative Party's chair, Nigel Huddleston. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So it's 100 days of leadership for Kemi Badenoch. What's the rating out of 10 so far?
Oh, pretty good, yeah. Look, the key role of Leader of the Opposition is to hold the government to account, and Kemi's done a really good job at that. They're struggling, and we're making sure that everybody knows they're struggling. So she's done a very good job, as we would expect.
I mean, that's a fair point, that a key role is to hold the government to account, but as the opposition, presumably it's also to be at least a second place in the polls, and you must be worried about how well Reform's doing.
Well, some polls put us in second, some third, some in first place, which doesn't seem to get as much airtime for some reason.
Which in the last week?
There was a couple last week that put us first. So there are. I mean, there's tons of polls, but I mean, genuinely, you know, you're a journalist, you can look back and see them. So there are polls that also put us in first place. The key thing as well is that is remarkable achievement 7 months on from a general election where we got an absolute trouncing. If somebody had said to me, Nigel, we're going to make you chair of the Conservative Party on the 5th of July, and in 7 months' time you'll be on par, very close to or behind the party that just got over 400 seats, none of us would have believed them. And the reason for that is we are holding this shambolic government to account, and the British public can see that we're on their side, whether it's, you know, campaigning against the terrible things they're doing on winter fuel, on damaging business through taxes, on farms, the attack on schools, all of these kind of things. We are making sure that the public know we're on their side and we're holding Labour to account. That is our job. We are a responsible party of potential government, and therefore we take this job of opposition really seriously.
Is your final comment there to imply that you don't think Reform is a responsible party of government?
Reform is a force to be reckoned with, but they are protesting. They are a populist party. They are trying to give easy, simple answers to really complex questions. You can do that, but if you want to be a party of government, you have to recognise things are a lot more complex. Now, many Reform voters share many of the values that we hold dear as Conservatives and the principles, but we exhibit them and want to implement them in government. That is our job, to hold this government to account, eventually to replace them and make sure a Conservative government is in place. That's our purpose. Nigel Farage has said many occasions his #1 purpose is to destroy the Conservative Party. That's a completely different thing. How's that going to get rid of this Labour government? You know, it's a very, very different proposition.
If both parties are still roughly at similar percentages in the polls, would it make sense to have some kind of merger or electoral pact if neither of them makes a clear move to the lead?
Well, for the reasons I just said, you know, that's not a sensible proposition. Nigel Farage is saying his goal is he wants to destroy the Conservative Party. How on earth could you do a deal with an entity, a group, a body that says they want to destroy you? That's not a great relationship. But as I said, my appeal, any pact that I would have, would be to Conservative-minded voters, please join us. Please join the Conservative Party. The best way we can get rid of this lefty, shambolic government, this Labour government, is to make sure that we get Conservatives elected, whether that's at local elections or at the general election next time, which, after all, is 4 years away. The polls can go up, the polls can go down. And be in no doubt, I do not underestimate the attractiveness of Reform to many people. But in terms of Conservative Party policies and principles, they belong to the Conservative Party. And in many ways, Reform is not really proposing Conservative Party policies. Their manifesto at the last election had £140 billion of tax and spending promises. That's not responsible government. That would not stack up with Conservative Party principles. It's very popular, it's populist, it's not Conservative.
Well, to be fair, we haven't had many policies from your leader of late, so we also can't test fully yet on that front.
Look, but we're very clear on the principles, and also you have seen some policy announcements. And when we do, and that's a deliberate strategy, because Kemi has said very clearly we are going through a process of recognising and understanding, and we need to show the public we understand why they booted us out. and therefore develop a policy platform that is credible, not just noise, not just making announcements. We need a detailed plan of policies that are credible, because we just don't want to just make noise and make false promises. We want to make sure the British public understand we are an alternative government. So that means making policies over time, and you will see more, which is announced policies on immigration. We've been very clear that we would reverse, many of the policies that Labour have implemented. For example, the farm tax.
Well, let's talk about the farmers. Obviously, there's a gathering in Westminster today.
Yeah.
Will Kemi Badenoch be there in person and speaking at it?
I don't know whether she's speaking at it, but we've got a strong presence. In fact, later on this morning, I'm meeting with a lot of Conservative MPs to do a demonstration as well. So we will be very visible, and we have been right across the country. This is the thing, not just in Westminster, but in the constituencies. You've got Conservative MPs, Conservative candidates, Conservative councillors, because we represent large parts of the rural area that are under attack by this government in many ways. The farm tax, what they're doing with planning, all sorts of things, telling us how we need to restructure government. They are attacking the countryside, and we represent the countryside, and we represent those people. We understand their issues and concerns, so we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them today and previously.
Let's touch on the latest around Andrew Gwynne and Oliver Ryan. A sort of broad question for you. Does a presence in a WhatsApp group and not immediately calling out something that somebody else has said, to you seem sufficient to lose a party whip, or do you have to say something terrible yourself?
I think the important thing is you've got to... I mean, certainly Andrew Gwynne's comments that I've seen are atrocious, and it's right that Keir Starmer attacked him. I mean, and it speaks to the mentality as well. It's not only the fact that he put it on a WhatsApp group. It's the fact that he thought that that was appropriate in the first place. And again, goes back to Labour MPs thinking that they can attack pensioners. They don't like people who don't generally vote for them. And I think that then being on a WhatsApp group and saying something that is completely inappropriate, you should call out or leave the WhatsApp group. And I think that, the other MPs involved will have to be held to account. And I think the Chief Whip's having a robust conversation with Oliver today, and that's appropriate.
And the same would happen if comments in WhatsApp groups applied to Conservative MPs under your chairmanship?
We take complaints very seriously, and we have an independent complaints process. So if this behaviour has been seen by people, then they can make a complaint, and it's independent. So, it's not me adjudicating with any political bias or mates or anything like that. It's an independent process. So we do take these things very seriously. But I say, in this particular circumstances, saying, oh, don't just put it on the WhatsApp group. No, I'm more concerned that the mentality of thinking that this kind of behaviour is appropriate in the first place.
Just finally, in terms of the latest set of tariffs announced by President Trump, 25% on steel and aluminium, luck or design so far, the UK is exempt from them?
Well, previously, when we've had the US impose tariffs, the UK has managed to get exemptions because we've had very good relationships with the US and we've engaged with them. That was when we were in power. That was what happened, including with steel previously. Unfortunately, this government does not have the same relationship. We've had a Prime Minister and a Foreign Secretary who've gone out of their way in the past to offend the leader of the free world.
But they haven't got tariffs yet.
We'll see what's coming. But I hope we don't, by the way. I hope they're able to negotiate. But also, just the Department for Business and Trade, where I and Kemi worked at, we were doing trade deals around the world, championing free trade. We need to engage with the US on these conversations. I don't believe that the Department for Business and Trade has had much engagement with the US yet. They should do. They are a really important trade partner, about £300 billion of bilateral trade. We were working really close with them. We actually did have negotiations for a free trade agreement before President Biden came in. They can pick that deal up and start to negotiate that again, but my understanding is that they're not. So I'd encourage Labour to engage with the US constructively and see how we can make the best deal that would be in the best interest of the UK and the US.
Nigel Huddleston, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.